Hi, anyway, we're here, and this is Jeff Mulvin, actually a senior, and we're going back, almost 79, we're going back. He's one of the original fighters back at the Jet Center, and way back then. And so we were actually just reminiscing on back then, Jeff, do you remember the times then that, I'm sure you can have some stories that we had back there at the Jet Center, with the team. How did you feel about, in the beginning, you coming, to the Jet Center?
Well, actually, I started even way before that. I started at the YMCA, the North Valley YMCA, back in 1979 with you. And this is when the whole family was training together. Sensei Lily, Sensei Blinky, Sensei Arnold would actually come in and teach classes once in a while, and that's the days we all dreaded, because it was one of those things where you did it right the first time, or you physically got the move done on you on a hardwood floor, and there was no mats, no soft padding back then. I think it was a really thin little judo mat or one of those hard plastic kind of things, and so we were really on the ball then.
Actually, back then, I used to do the kind of training. Actually, if I taught students the way I taught these guys back then, I probably would have been sued for for physical abuse and verbal abuse. But back then, it was, the Bushido way was that kind of discipline, and so he comes from that, era of when I was teaching. If you want to call it guerrilla warfare, so be it. But that's exactly what I was teaching, a lot of type of warfare. But when I say guerrilla warfare, almost like that type of warfare of training. And so Jeff comes back from those type of training, where back then, what was very popular was a katana sword. Was basically one of was a bamboo sword, and these guys, man, they used to have welts every day.
him and Sensei Ruben were famous for that, for doing leg checks with the sword, and there was some other unique things that used to happen, besides the fact that we never knew who was going to teach that night, and we knew it was going to be a rough time regardless. And when I first came in, I remember interviewing with Sensei Benny and saying, "Oh, you have a black belt from this and that." I was like, he knew that I was full of it, and I was just trying to make myself look bigger, because everybody's dream was to be with the Urquidez family back then, and you had to go through a long, kind of an audition process. And so he says to me, "Oh, okay, so you're a black belt." I'm like, "Yeah," and I was fully lying. I wasn't even a white belt. Well, I was a white belt, but anyways, so I'm dressed in jeans, cowboy boots. And he says, "Well, there's the floor right there. You can start right now." I'm like, "Well, I don't have any gear on." And he's like, "There's the floor." I'm like, "Okay." So next 3 hours, it was a 3-hour class, and it wasn't an hour class or 45 minutes. It was 3 hours of just getting beat down. Just really, really to test somebody to see if you can really hang, And I got through the 3 hours, and I actually came back for more. So, and that's just the beginning. That was just the first night. So, anyways,
it actually, basically back in those days of training, Jeff actually went through, actually outlasted a lot of the fighters that came in and left, came and gone. And then when I opened up, actually the biggest part was actually to go to the Jet Camp, which the Jet Camp was in, was in Lancaster, was 55 acres, and actually it never got opened. It started, and then for some reason, long story short, we didn't have insurance, so we were changing, and a fire came right through it, burned it to the ground, and so after that, a year later, everybody thought that was the end of the Jet, and Blinky, my brother-in-law Blinky, and I, we started the Jet Center. And in the Jet Center, it was very unique, because we actually, Jeff was part of actually coming in and help building. That's what all the students did, and it was expected of the students to be part of, and they did everything. They mopped, they cleaned. It was part of being the Bushido way. So
yeah. Oh, and going back to the YMCA, I remember that after the first night, I forgot to say this. After the 3-hour workout that I barely lasted, he then asked me to go clean the bathrooms and mop the floors of the dojo. That was my whole experience. So the Bushido way was that was the traditional. You're gonna go clean the toilets now and the floor, and this was a big giant 4,000 square foot hardwood floor on top of it.
But back there in those type of training, give you a little idea. I used to have there used to be about maybe 60 warriors, and then it was like a free for all. I turned the lights off, and I said, "You have to learn how to fight in the dark." Truly, so I would turn the light off, and I said, "Okay, this is about really being sensitive to energies," and this was way back then. Back in 78, 79, back then I would turn the lights off, and I said, "I need you to feel the energies and be able to move on energies." I turned the light back on, everybody be hiding in the corners, and I said, "Everybody get back up," and I would because then there were consequences, there was a price that if they didn't stay and actually felt each other's energy and move with each other's energy, that they would pay the consequence, and they did. So Jeff comes from that type of era, that type of trying to training.
Now let me give you one more notch above what he did on that. One of the nights that he did that kind of night training where he would get us all in the dojo and turn the lights off, he says, "Well, I want you guys to all feel each other's energy, and I want you to listen to your surroundings." So what he does is he turns the lights off and starts throwing school chairs, okay, in the middle of the room, and all of a sudden you hear all this crashing and getting hit in the arms and the back of the head, and then everybody starts scattering. So like he said, he turned the lights on, and we're all huddled like little rats in the corner like this. Everybody spread out to all four corners, and it's like he's looking, there's all these chairs, like these little chairs, take a picture of these chairs right here, a little bit bigger than that, and they're all strewn all over the dojo. So that was one of the night trainings, and then I do remember another night we went to Mission Park, and he had other members hiding up in the trees and jumping out of the trees at us. It was like ninja training. So that was another one of his little things. He says, "This is like guerrilla warfare," because back then he was training a lot of ex-Vietnam vets that were going out doing, like private security and all these different things. So he was coming up with all these different unique things to test us. Always keeping us on our toes.
But truly Jeff comes from old school, and one of the seniors in Jukido-kan, actually it was Kempo Shotokan at the time, but actually in 78 was when I started writing the book of kickboxing, where I was starting to design into a curriculum where people can follow it. That was my first book. And it came out in the early 80s. I started when I opened up actually the Jet Center to have a home for kickboxing. Now everybody came from different parts of the world. We had dormitories and restaurants and stuff. And so these guys, where Jeff was there with all the rest of the guys, actually we had people come from all over. Talk about that.
At the time in '84 when the Jet Center opened, it just became instantly a worldwide hub for martial arts. I mean, everybody who was anybody in martial arts, boxing even, we had all the top-ranked heavyweight boxers, kickboxers, karate. Everybody was coming to be part of it. We had the dormitories where we housed fighters from around the world. And about that time, after about 4 or 5 years, it got so popular that all of us had to take different jobs and wear different hats. So we're running the front. Some of us are going into coaching, like myself. I decided to make the transition to coaching while I was still fighting, and then decided to move my way up because Sensei Ruben was moving into promoting, along with Sensei Benny still had a fight career also, but was doing the promotion with Sensei Blinky also. So there was a lot of spots to fill, so I decided to become a coach and move my way up, and then I ended up becoming the head coach of all the pros. And we did a lot of shows at the Palladium, Las Vegas, at the Mirage, Caesar's Palace. We grew from the local clubs like the Reseda Country Club and the Hollywood Palladium, and that thing just grew. It just blew up, huge. you know.
Yeah.
And so that's where I made my transition from fighting to coaching, because there was a need for it. There was a lack of trainers at one point. We had so many people and so many champions from around the world coming that, you know, everybody kind of had to blossom out and do a bunch of different things.
But you know, it was some of these guys here, you know, when new fighters came in, all these guys, there was PD in all of them. PD, they all in the dormitory, you know, and they used to sit around the ring and they see somebody else come in and they all start drooling. And I look at them and I say, guys, you guys, you know, behave yourself, you know, because these guys were always, because they got tired of beating each other up, and they were looking for new meat, new energy, you know, some new prey out there. And there was always, new, and you know what, it didn't matter if there were professional champion boxers or whatever, they didn't care, because they did it all. They boxed, they kickboxed, they grappled, they did it all. And that was the mecca of the Jet Center, of what it was about. It was where warriors came and congregate and perfect. And this is Jeff. Actually, as you can see, he survived it. He can still understand himself, you know, after all these years of warfare. Because Jeff, I mean, believe it or not, Jeff here was weighing 127 pounds, 28 pounds, and 6'2", or 6'1" at that weight. And I mean, he was all bones, but let me tell you, he had a record of knocking out. I mean, he just had those long legs, and so finally, man, we had, you know, they thought that we were starving him at the Jet Center because he was so thin, but he was strong, and so we slowly started pushing him. And no matter how much he ate, and this one can eat back then, but yet nobody knew where did it all go. But he was actually the tallest, and in his weight category, he was like almost 3-4 feet higher than any of his opponents. And so this is the era. When I say he's one of the seniors, he's still, as you can see, he's still around, and he's always actually traveled with all of us and took a lot of fighters and created some champions of his own, you know, and traveled around the world. And so now, and actually Jeff here is actually took care of actually most of my memorabilia from magazines from all over the world, from movies, and you name it. Matt can't even remember some of the stuff.
No, I just held the archives all these years because, you know, someone had to do it. And we actually had the storage at the Jet Center up at the dormitory, and stuff started disappearing after a while. Fighters would come and they go, oh, there's a nice poster, and you know, they'd take off stuff. So I would say, you know what, I got to put a stop to this, and you know.
So the good part, like with Jeff, though, you know, just so you know that because he is a senior and he's, you know, and he's still, you know, he's still with me, you know, he's still around, and he's still, you know, he's it's family, and he's a diehard. He's one of truly the makers of Aikido-kan, kickboxing, and boxing and so forth. So, but just to let you know that, you know, it's when I say it's a way of life, truly, it's a way of life, and this is what that I've been passing on for many years. Is I don't want to teach people how to live their life. I just want to give them tools so they can live their life, and that's what we're doing here.
Yeah, it truly is.